Hi, I'm Nancy Shanto, and I'm here to read to you from Access to Power, a radical approach for changing your life. I'm going to read to you today from the How to Recognize Depletion chapter, Creating a Life of Plenitude. How to Recognize Depletion and Create a Life of Plenitude is the actual name of the chapter. This is something that I wrote. And I wanted to read this because depletion and rescue have seemed to be really popular topics, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about how they relate to each other. And I'm going to read this section, and I'm going to read a couple more sections that are really short, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. And just to remind you, our depletion scale is +10 to -10 with 0 in the middle, and I call +10 top of the world, -10 is like suicidal thoughts or really the worst, lowest level of energy that you have, and 0 is a neutral, fragile state. Okay. Depletion and rescue. Scarcity is one of the great causes of the rescue dynamic. We don't have enough energy to negotiate an agreement. We may not even have enough energy to ask for 100% of what we want, or to even investigate what that might be. So we rescue by unilaterally thinking through what would fix the problem, and then implement it without discussing it with anyone else. We do more than our share of the work, and when our fix goes sour, we end up burned out in the victim state or angry and persecutory. We still may not have the energy to ask for 100% of what we want. So out of guilt, we rescue again, losing energy and going down the depletion scale. It's a vicious cycle. Sometimes it's helpful to claim the power of the victim state, let ourselves collapse, and stop doing things to save anyone else. If we know what we need to gain energy and we do those things for ourselves, we are acting out our 100% of what we want, even if we can't ask for it and negotiate to agreement. And sometimes if we're so depleted that all we can do to make something better is rescue, we can at least be compassionate with ourselves for making that choice. Sometimes there isn't a non-rescue option, and then it's best to choose the least troublesome rescue. We may need to fight the cultural message that tells us there's always a win-win solution. I've sat with clients who are facing too many win-lose and lose-lose options to think there is always a win-win. In those cases, we just have to choose the least depleting option. And sometimes when we face a win-lose or lose-lose choice, all we can do is learn to tolerate our discomfort at being the winner in a win-lose situation. Or accept being the loser in a lose-lose. Or the loser in a win-lose. Those are my additions. Okay. Don't mess with 0. When we've been depleted for a while, 0 can feel exuberant. I call 0 a neutral, fragile state. We're not good, but we're not bad. It can be tempting to jump into every hard problem as if we have superhero powers, when in fact we're vulnerable and easily depleted. It's far wiser to keep making replenishment plans, invest in higher numbers, and leave chronic difficulties for later. Depletion par normal. In our puritanical, hardworking, pull yourself up by your bootstraps culture, we often get rewarded for being the person who is most exhausted. We trade metaphoric war stories of challenging people in difficult circumstances to see who wins the biggest victim badge of honor. In family and community cultures where there is a lot of scarcity, often people with the most difficulties are the only ones who get any sympathy or help. No wonder we compete to be at the bottom. We also need to fight other people's pig for us if we actually experience full repletion. Our culture is highly suspicious and judgmental about people who are calm, relaxed, not in overwhelm, and able to make healthy decisions for themselves. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about rescue and depletion because actually Julia Kelleher, who created the repletion scale, created it in the context of thinking about rescue. And how sometimes people could just seem like they couldn't not rescue. And she realized that that was because they didn't have the energy to negotiate. So when we are finding ourselves rescuing and rescuing and rescuing, even when we don't want to, even when we know better, a lot of the times what can be happening is that we're so depleted that we don't have a non-rescue option. We don't have the choice to not rescue. And when that happens, what we can do is choose our rescue. So really look between the rescues and make a choice. That choice making is going to be empowering. And we can also make sure that we're attending to our own state. See if we can put some energy into replenishing ourselves. And be compassionate for the fact that we, A, can't stop rescuing, B, don't have any non-rescue options, and C, are depleted. And maybe as we invest in ourselves, we'll start getting better. Sometimes we are in a systemic rescue, a systemic depletion, and it's going to take a lot more work to get out of it. But the awareness is empowering. And when we acknowledge our state, we have located ourselves in our adult consciousness, and that location gives us a lot of space in which to tell ourselves the truth about what our circumstances are. So it's demystifying, even if we don't currently have the power to take action differently. Even if we don't have the skill to take action differently, we have an understanding of why we're suffering and what our circumstances are. And that self-acknowledgement, that genuine telling ourselves the truth act is really deeply relieving. It takes a lot of pressure off of us to do something we can't do. And it allows us to really take power from and consolation from the things we can. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions about depletion and rescue, please ask.